When he first joined the long-distance space crew, he did it with a simple dream. He wanted to see new worlds, new skies, and new life beyond Earth. He never imagined that one decision would change everything, or that a single choice would place him in the center of a faraway empire. He was just an ordinary engineer with a quiet personality, someone who preferred the sound of humming machines over big conversations. People respected him for his careful work and calm nature, but he was never the type to search for spotlight or adventure. Still, life has a way of pulling people into stories they never expected to live. The ship he worked on wasn't a military ship or a grand explorer. It was a simple diplomatic carrier, a vessel built for peaceful travel between human colonies and friendly star systems. Their mission was boring on most days' routine checks, long silence, and the slow drift of stars on the main screen. He spent most of his time adjusting circuits, repairing communication panels, and making sure the ship's life support always stayed balanced. He liked the quiet. The quiet made sense. That day began like every other. The crew shared morning food, joked about small things, and prepared for another long stretch of travel. But before anyone could settle into their tasks, an alarm echoed through the ship. The sound wasn't one they heard often. It wasn't a technical problem or a fire warning. It was something far more serious, Dot. It was a distress call. People rushed to their stations as the captain ordered the message to be displayed. The voice coming through wasn't human. It was soft, trembling, fading in and out. No one recognized the language at first, but the computer translated enough to make the meaning clear. Someone out there was begging for help. The message came from an alien vessel only a short distance away, short in space terms. Of course, the captain didn't hesitate. "Change course," he said. "We respond." Everyone on the crew knew the rule. If another ship sent a distress call, no matter what species or system, they had a duty to help. That was part of the diplomatic code. But no one expected what they found when they reached the source. The alien ship was damaged on one side, drifting slowly like a tired bird. Its lights flickered weakly, and its engines looked as if they had been pushed far past safety limits. A team of officers boarded it carefully, checking for danger. He joined them, carrying medical tools and a small repair kit, thinking he might fix wiring or bring power back online. He wasn't prepared for the scene waiting behind the door. Inside the ship, the air was cold and thin. Lights struggled to stay on. A few alien crew members sat against the walls, exhausted but conscious. They didn't attack, didn't threaten, didn't even speak. They only pointed toward the back of the ship where the sick were kept. The crew followed, moving slowly out of respect. That was where he saw her. She was lying on a smooth platform, covered in soft silver cloth that shimmered even in the broken light. Her skin had a faint glow pale, almost translucent, with tiny patterns faintly shining beneath the surface. Her hair moved gently, like strands of liquid light. Even in her weak state, she looked as if she came from a world full of beauty and calm. One of her guardians explained through a translator that she was the princess of their empire, and that she had been struck by a rare infection during their journey. The medical team tried their tests, their scans, and their treatments, but nothing worked. The alien doctors were desperate. Their voices shook when they realized their medicine could not save her. She was slipping further away with every passing minute. He stood at the edge of the room, watching quietly. He didn't expect to be involved. He wasn't a doctor. He was only an engineer. But when the alien doctor scanned her again and spoke with panic in his voice, something unexpected happened. The computer flashed a result on its screen. The enzyme missing from her body, the thing she needed to survive, was present in humans. More surprisingly, it was strongest in him. The medical officer turned toward him, confused. "Your blood shows the perfect match," he said. "Closer than anyone else on board." Everyone stared. It didn't make sense. He was ordinary, nothing special. Why him, out of all people? But there was no time to think deeply about it. They had minutes, maybe less. The alien guardian stepped forward slowly. "Will you help her?" he asked, voice full of fear and hope. He didn't know what to say at first. His heart was beating hard, and he could feel every eye in the room waiting for his answer. He wasn't brave. He wasn't a hero. Yet he couldn't just stand there and watch a life fade away. So he nodded quietly. The crew quickly prepared a safe transfer. They took his blood carefully, making sure it wouldn't harm him. The alien doctors mixed it with a special stabilizing fluid and injected it into the princess's system. No one breathed. Everyone waited for several minutes. Nothing changed. Her skin remained pale, her breathing weak and uneven. He sat nearby, feeling weaker from the donation, but hoping it worked. Then, very slowly, a faint light passed through her skin. Her breathing steadied. The strange patterns on her skin brightened slightly, like stars returning to the night sky. The alien doctor let out a relieved gasp. "It's working," he whispered. He didn't realize how big the moment was. He didn't understand what saving her life meant for the alien empire or what effect it would have on his future. He only felt relief, simple, warm relief, that someone who was suffering so much could breathe again. The princess didn't wake up yet, but her condition stabilized. She was no longer dying. Her guardians bowed their heads to him with deep gratitude. Their gestures were polite and gentle, but there was also something heavy behind their eyes, a seriousness he couldn't understand yet. Once everyone returned to his own ship, exhaustion hit him. He wanted to go back to his cabin, lie down, and sleep for hours. But that peace didn't last. Before he could rest, the captain informed him that a royal vessel from the alien empire had already been notified. They were on their way to escort him for questioning. The captain placed a hand on his shoulder and said it might just be a formality. But when the alien ship arrived, things changed quickly. Their guards were tall, graceful, and silent. They didn't hurt him, didn't threaten, didn't shout. They simply insisted that he come with them at once. They said the Empress needed to understand how his blood saved her daughter. They said it was important for the Empire. The tone was polite, but something about it felt like there was no choice. His crew looked worried but couldn't refuse. He was led to the royal vessel, expecting a short interview maybe, answering questions about humans, medicine, or Earth. Instead, the ship departed with him still inside, moving faster than anything he had ever seen. He felt a strange mix of fear and disbelief. He wasn't a criminal. He wasn't even a public figure. He was just a quiet engineer who happened to be in the right place at the wrong time, or the wrong place at the right time. He tried to ask when he would be returned to his crew, but the guards always answered with soft, unclear words. "Soon," they said. "After the Empress speaks with you." The journey was long, and he had no idea what waited for him. He stared out the window, watching stars slide by like falling sparks. He thought about Earth, about his quiet room on the ship, about his normal routine. He wondered if he would ever return to any of it. When the royal vessel finally arrived at the Aurelian capital, he saw a world brighter and larger than anything he ever imagined. Towers of light reached toward the sky, and thousands of floating structures crossed the air like silver birds. But the beauty didn't comfort him. Not when he remembered why he was there. Guards guided him through a long hall, decorated with soft glowing panels and elegant designs. They told him he was honored. They told him he would meet the Empress soon. But none of them answered the question he cared most about. When would he go home? His heart pounded as the doors finally opened. He didn't know what kind of ruler the Empress was. He didn't know if she would thank him, reward him, or blame him. He didn't even know if she believed humans were trustworthy. He walked inside slowly. trying to breathe normally. He didn't expect gratitude, didn't expect anger, but he also didn't expect what happened. Next, she didn't smile. She didn't invite him to sit. Her eyes examined him with a mixture of fear, calculation, and deep interest. Then she spoke in a steady voice that sent a cold wave through him. "You saved my daughter," she said, "and for that I am grateful." Then she paused. "But your blood, your existence, has become far more important than you understand. I cannot allow you to return to your world. Not yet." Those words struck him like a heavy weight. He felt the world shift beneath him. He wanted to argue, but he couldn't find the right words. The guard stepped forward gently, not to hurt him, but to guide him. He wasn't being honored. He wasn't being questioned. He was being kept. And he didn't know how long this would last, or if he would ever see Earth. Again, he stepped carefully into the palace, his eyes scanning the bright, glowing halls. Every surface reflected light in strange, soft patterns, and the air smelled faintly sweet. Unlike anything he had known on Earth, the guards escorted him silently, their presence heavy, but not threatening. He tried to take in the beauty around him, but his mind was filled with worry. He had saved the princess's life, but now, instead of going home, he was trapped in a place full of strangers, with no idea how long he would stay. The room he was led to was unlike any prison he had imagined. It was large, with walls that glimmered gently and a bed that looked soft enough to sink into. A small table held a few food items, fresh and strange. There were no bars, no chains, no visible locks, but the doors were heavy and guarded at all times. Every time he thought he might be able to leave, he realized the guards were always close by, watching silently, waiting. He felt a mix of emotions. Relief that he was not physically harmed, fear because of the uncertainty, and confusion at the strange kindness mixed with restriction. He wanted to sleep, but his mind was restless. Questions raced through him. Why was he being kept here? What did the Empress plan to do with him? And most importantly, would he ever see his home again? After hours of waiting, a small holographic message appeared in his room. The princess. She spoke softly, using a translator to communicate. "Thank you," she said. "I feel better now. You saved me." Her voice was calm, gentle, but carried a strange weight that made him realize the depth of what he had done. He wanted to respond, to say it was nothing, but he felt awkward and unsure. What could he say to someone from a world so different, whose life he had held in his hands? The message ended, leaving him alone again. He walked to the window and looked outside. The city stretched endlessly, towers of light reaching into the sky, floating walkways connecting them. People moved below, not like humans, but like delicate beings floating on the air. Everything was strange, beautiful, and overwhelming. He felt very small. He had traveled far from Earth, and now stood in a world he didn't fully understand, at the mercy of rulers he barely knew. The next day, a representative from the palace entered his room. Not a guard, but a kind-looking figure who seemed responsible for his care. He explained gently that the Empress had requested the human be kept for observation. "She is worried," the representative said. "Your blood is rare. She fears it may be important to her people's survival. You must stay until she decides otherwise." He nodded silently, though inside he felt a heavy weight pressing on his chest. Observation? He had never asked for this. He had never wanted to be part of politics or science experiments. He had only wanted to help. And now he realized that helping someone so important could cost him his freedom. Days passed slowly. The guards never left, though they were polite. Meals were delivered regularly, and he was allowed to walk within a large, enclosed garden filled with glowing plants and soft streams of water. The garden was calming, and he appreciated the quiet, but it also reminded him of how trapped he was. He could explore, but only as far as they allowed. The plants, the sky, the soft colors, everything seemed to mock his inability to leave. The princess visited him once, during a brief, carefully supervised meeting. She was stronger now, moving with grace and light, but her eyes held concern. "I don't understand why my mother keeps you here," she said quietly. "You saved me. She should be grateful." He shook his head, unsure how to respond. "It's her decision," he said. I don't know why she feels this is necessary." She sighed, looking down at her hands. "She says it is for the Empire, for the safety of our people. But I can't help feeling it's wrong. You risked yourself to save me. That should mean something." Her words touched him more than he expected. Despite her unfamiliar appearance, her voice and tone reminded him of someone sincere, someone who cared about what was right. He wanted to reassure her, to say that he understood, but he realized she was powerless in her own way. Even as a princess, she had limits she could not cross. The days continued, each one blurring into the next. He spent time in the garden, reading manuals and journals he found in his room. He learned more about the Aurelian Empire, their history, their customs, their laws. Their world was older than Earth in many ways, and their technology was far advanced. He marveled at it, but also felt a growing tension. The more he learned, the more he understood how valuable he had become. Not just as a human, but as someone whose blood could change the course of their future. Despite the restriction, he tried to make himself comfortable. He fixed small things in his room, adjusted the lighting, and even began learning some of their language. It was difficult, strange, and beautiful, but it gave him a sense of control. He needed control in a place where so much was decided for him. One evening, while walking in the garden, he noticed movement among the shadows. It was the princess, slipping past guards and hidden cameras. She approached quietly, as if she didn't want anyone to see her. "I couldn't wait," she said softly. "I wanted to see you." He smiled, though nervously. I'm glad you came. But this is dangerous. If someone sees you," she shook her head, "I can't stand seeing you like this. You're not a prisoner, not in my eyes. You're the one who saved me. And that means more than my mother's rules." They sat together by a small glowing fountain. She told him about her life, about her worries for her people, about the pressure she felt to always do what was expected. He listened quietly, realizing that though she was royalty, she was also human, or at least human-like in her emotions. She too struggled with rules and expectations, though they were different from his own world. Over time, their conversations became the highlight of his days. She taught him about her culture, the meaning of the glowing symbols on her skin, the stories behind their empire. In return, he told her about Earth, about rivers and mountains, about simple things she could barely imagine. For the first time since arriving, he felt a connection, a bridge between two very different worlds. Yet even with these small moments of joy, the uncertainty never left him. Every knock at the door, every footstep in the hall, reminded him that he was still under observation. He could not leave. He could not know what the Empress was planning. His future was uncertain, and no amount of comfort or conversation could erase that fear. The palace staff treated him with politeness, yet there was always a distance. Smiles were careful, voices calm, but he sensed the weight behind their eyes. Everyone here respected the Empress's decisions, and he knew that until she said otherwise, he had no choice but to wait. Despite this, he refused to give in to despair. He explored his room, organized his thoughts, and trained his mind to focus on small, achievable tasks. He practiced the skills that had brought him here, remembering that his knowledge of systems, engines, and medicine had saved the princess. He reminded himself that he had done something meaningful, something that mattered. Even in captivity, that could not be taken away. The princess continued her visits, each time growing more comfortable speaking openly. She shared small gifts of flower from her private garden, a delicate ornament glowing with soft light. She laughed at his clumsy attempts to mimic their customs and encouraged him to keep learning. Their bond grew quietly, secretly, a fragile friendship in a place full of rules and control. But the presence of the Empress was always looming. Rumors reached him through servants and whispers, sometimes that the Empress was studying him, sometimes that she questioned what his presence meant for the Empire. He didn't know what to believe, but he knew he had to be careful. Every word, every action was noticed. Every mistake could change his situation entirely. And yet, even with fear and uncertainty surrounding him, he learned something important, that kindness, courage, and quiet perseverance could survive even in the strangest places. He had saved a life, and though it had brought him into chains he could not escape, it had also connected him to a world beyond anything he had imagined. He realized, slowly, that this palace, these glowing halls, and even the Empress's decision could not take away his spirit. He could not leave yet, but he could learn, observe, and prepare for the moment when he might be able to act. And maybe, just maybe, he could find a way to bridge the distance between two worlds, Earth and the Aurelian Empire, without losing himself along the way. He walked back to his room that evening, the soft glow of the palace lights reflecting in his eyes. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but he knew one thing: he would not give up. He had come this far, and no matter how uncertain the path, he would face it. After all, saving a life was just the beginning. Days passed quietly, but the stillness felt heavy. He had settled into the strange rhythm of the palace, waking, walking through the glowing gardens, learning about the alien culture, and talking with the princess whenever she could visit. Yet even as he grew more familiar with the palace, the uncertainty of his situation never left him. He still did not know how long he would be kept, or what the Empress truly planned for him. That thought weighed on him like a shadow he could never escape. The princess, now fully recovered, had become more open and curious. She had always been gentle and polite, but after regaining her health, she started questioning her mother's decisions in subtle ways. During one of her visits, she approached him quietly in the garden, where the soft lights from floating plants reflected in the water of small streams. Her eyes were serious, yet there was a softness there he could not ignore. "My mother," she began, hesitating. "I don't understand why she keeps you here. You risked your life to save me. How can she think this is right?" He looked down, unsure of how to answer. "I don't know," he said quietly. "I can't understand their customs, their rules, or her decisions. I only know that I did what I thought was right. Maybe that's all anyone can do." She sat beside him on a smooth, glowing stone, her hair floating gently as if moved by invisible currents. "It's not fair," she whispered. "Even if I am a princess, even if she is my mother, she cannot see that what you did is more than duty. You saved me because you cared. That should matter more than anything else." Her words struck him deeply. Though she was from a completely different world, with different customs and responsibilities, her voice was human in its honesty. It reminded him that courage, empathy, and gratitude were universal, not bound by language, culture, or Planet Dot. As they talked, he noticed her hesitation. She wanted to trust her mother, to follow her instructions, but she also struggled with the idea of keeping someone in chains who had saved her life. The conflict in her eyes mirrored the conflict he felt inside. He wanted to believe that the Empress was fair, that she would eventually release him. But every rumor, every whispered conversation from the palace staff reminded him that he was still under strict observation. During their conversations, she began to teach him small secrets about her people, details that were never mentioned in official records. How they measured time not by hours, but by cycles of light. How their society valued cooperation over competition. How every action, even a simple one like giving a gift or speaking politely, carried deep meaning. He listened carefully, absorbing everything. The more he learned, the more he realized how far from home he was. Yet somehow, that distance also made him feel alive. He began sharing stories of Earth in return. He spoke of oceans stretching endlessly, of forests so thick and green that sunlight barely touched the ground, of mountains that rose like walls toward the sky. He described quiet towns where neighbors knew one another, and small cafes filled with laughter and music. She listened, fascinated, sometimes asking questions he could barely answer because she had never seen such things. But she listened with genuine interest, and in those moments, the walls between their worlds felt smaller. One afternoon, as they sat by a glowing fountain, she asked a question that made him pause. "Do you miss your world?" she asked softly. He stared at the water, watching the light ripple. "Every day," he admitted. "I miss the small things, the smell of rain, the sound of birds, even just walking on solid ground without thinking about floating platforms or strange gravity. But I also know that being here, I am part of something I never expected. I saved a life, and maybe that means something. Maybe it gives me a purpose I didn't know I needed." She nodded, understanding more than he expected. "Purpose is important," she said, "but freedom is important too. You gave me life, and you deserve to have your own life in return. That is why I question my mother's decisions." Her honesty was refreshing, but it also made him uneasy. If she spoke so openly, if she challenged her mother, what risks would she face? In their world, rules were strict, and even the smallest defiance could have consequences. He wanted to protect her from conflict, but he also realized he could not ask her to stay silent for his sake. Over the next few days, the princess grew bolder. She began slipping small items into his room when no one was watching: a piece of glowing fruit, a scroll with ancient illustrations, a tiny book written in their language. She encouraged him to explore the palace in small ways, showing him hidden paths and quiet corners where he could think, read, or simply breathe. During one of these secret visits, she spoke with urgency. "You have to understand something," she said. "You are more than a guest here. You are unusual. My mother believes your blood could be important, not just for my survival, but for the future of our people. That is why you are kept here. But I want you to know, I will help you in whatever ways I can. You are not alone." Her words warmed him, though they also deepened the fear in his chest. The Empress's intentions were unclear, and yet here was the princess, risking small moments of defiance to help him. He realized that their bond, fragile as it was, could become the key to his survival. He began paying closer attention to the palace itself. The guards, while polite, were disciplined. Every movement he made was noted. The staff spoke in hushed tones, often glancing toward his room as if unsure whether to approach. He learned to read the patterns of their behavior, to move quietly, and to respect the rules while still finding small freedoms. Every day was a careful balance of patience and observation. During this time, he also began understanding the hierarchy of the palace. The Empress ruled with authority that few dared to question. Nobles and advisors waited silently for her decisions, and even the princess, despite her status, had limits she could not cross openly. He realized that his situation was complicated not by malice, but by structure. He was valuable, rare, and difficult to place within their rules. Despite this, moments of genuine connection with the princess reminded him that kindness and understanding could still exist even in strict worlds. They laughed together over small mistakes, like when he mispronounced words in her language or misunderstood a gesture. They shared stories of fear, hope, and dreams. In those moments, he felt less like a captive and more like a friend, a bridge between two very different worlds. But even with these small victories, the weight of his situation never fully lifted. He could not leave the palace. He could not contact his crew. He could not know whether Earth even knew where he was. And he could not predict what the Empress would decide. Every day was a reminder that his freedom was uncertain, and every action carried weight. One evening, as he sat by the glowing stream in the garden, he reflected on everything that had happened. He thought about Earth, the ship, the quiet life he had left behind, and the incredible journey that had brought him here. He realized that saving a life had been just the beginning. Now he was part of something far larger, a world of light, rules, and unknown dangers. And though fear and uncertainty were constant companions, he also felt a strange strength growing inside him. He had faced situations he never expected, navigated unfamiliar customs, and built a bond with someone from a completely different world. That strength, he knew, would guide him through whatever came next. The princess returned that evening, slipping through the shadows as usual. She sat beside him, her eyes reflecting the soft glow of the garden lights. "You are stronger than you think," she said quietly. "Even if you do not believe it yourself, I see it. You saved me, and you have adapted to a world that was never meant for you. That matters. That is power, too." He smiled, feeling a warmth he had not felt since arriving. "I never thought of it that way," he admitted. I just try to do what I can. Sometimes it is enough, sometimes it is not." She reached out, placing a small hand on his arm. "It is always enough. You have already changed so much. You have shown courage, kindness, and wisdom. And even here, in chains you did not ask for, you are free in ways my mother cannot understand." Her words stayed with him long after she left. That night, as he lay in the soft bed of his room, he reflected on the strange journey he was on. He had been an ordinary engineer on an ordinary mission, and now he was at the center of a world far larger than he had imagined. He had saved a life, formed a connection, and learned to navigate a place where rules were strict and freedom was limited. And though he did not know what tomorrow would bring, he understood one thing clearly. He would face it with courage, patience, and hope. Because even in a world so different from his own, even in chains he had not chosen, he had discovered something stronger than fear. He had discovered that kindness, courage, and friendship could exist anywhere, and that they could change not only a life, but an entire world. Life in the palace had become a strange rhythm for him. He woke to the soft glow of the palace lights, walked carefully through the gardens, and spent hours observing the routines of the guards and staff. Every day was a lesson in patience, in reading subtle signs, in understanding what he could do and what he could not. And though he had grown accustomed to the palace's beauty, its light, and its strange serenity, he had not grown accustomed to the feeling of being watched. The princess visited more often now. She seemed more confident, more determined, and more aware of the limitations her mother had placed on her. She would slip into his room quietly, speak with him softly, and leave small items for him, gifts or messages, hidden within the palace's many nooks and corners. She was his only connection to freedom, in a sense. Her presence reminded him that even in a world built on strict rules and expectations, there were small acts of rebellion, kindness, and courage that could make a difference. One evening, she came to him with urgency in her voice. "You have to understand something," she said. "You are not like the others here. Your blood, your existence, it is rare. My mother fears what it could mean for our people. That is why she keeps you here." He listened quietly, feeling the weight of her words settle on him. He had known he was valuable, but the reality of it now seemed overwhelming. His presence in the palace was no longer just about gratitude. It was about survival, about politics, and about decisions that could affect an entire empire. And yet, despite this heavy truth, the princess treated him with care, honesty, and respect. That in itself felt like a small kind of freedom. "Why do you help me?" he asked softly. "Even when it is risky for you?" She looked at him, her eyes steady. "Because it is right," she said simply. "Because you saved me, and because I cannot stand by and do nothing while someone who helped me suffers. You deserve more than chains, even if my mother cannot see it." Her words struck him deeply. Though she was royalty, though her world was governed by rules he could barely comprehend, she understood what mattered most: courage, empathy, and honesty. She had a strength that went beyond titles, and her loyalty to him was not bound by her mother's commands. Over the next few days, they began exploring the palace in small, secret ways. She showed him hidden passageways, quiet gardens, and places where the palace's usual order felt softer, more human. They spent hours talking, sharing stories, and learning about each other's worlds. She taught him about the empire's history, their technology, and their customs. In return, he told her about Earth, about rivers, forests, cities, and skies filled with stars. They laughed together at the differences, marveled at similarities, and found comfort in the shared understanding that even worlds apart, some things were universal: hope, fear, courage, and friendship. But with every small act of connection came a reminder of the risks. Guards patrolled unseen corridors, servants watched quietly, and the Empress's presence was always near, even if she did not appear. They were never completely free. Every conversation had to be measured, every step considered. One wrong move could change everything. The princess became more bold in her actions. She smuggled him small gifts and notes, often hidden within ordinary objects. She whispered information about the palace and its routines, teaching him how to move without drawing attention. She encouraged him to practice patience and observation, to understand not only the physical layout of the palace, but the political and social dynamics that governed it. During one of their secret walks, she spoke with a seriousness that made his heart pound. "You have to be careful," she said. "My mother believes your blood is essential, not just for my survival, but for the survival of the empire. You are important in ways that neither of us fully understand yet. That is why you are kept here. But you are not alone. I will help you, even if it is small, even if it seems impossible." He felt a strange mix of gratitude and fear. Her promise gave him hope, but it also reminded him that his situation was precarious. He was valuable, yes, but that value made him vulnerable. And yet, in her presence, he felt a strength he had never known. Her belief in him, her quiet courage, and her determination inspired him to keep moving forward, to keep learning, and to keep hoping. He began paying closer attention to the palace staff and their routines. He noticed small patterns, the timing of the guards' patrols, the subtle cues that indicated the Empress's presence, and the way the staff communicated without words. He realized that knowledge was power, even in captivity. By understanding the palace, he could navigate it more safely and find opportunities to act within the constraints placed upon him. The princess noticed his growing awareness. "You are learning quickly," she said one evening, as they sat by a quiet stream in the gardens. "That is good. Knowledge is strength here, and patience is survival. You must use both wisely." He nodded, appreciating her guidance. She had become more than a friend. She was a teacher, a guide, and a companion. She helped him adapt to a world that was not built for him, and in doing so, she gave him a sense of purpose amidst uncertainty. Yet the tension of his situation remained. Every day, he wondered what the Empress was planning. Was she simply cautious, or did she have a larger plan for him? He did not know, and that uncertainty was the heaviest burden of all. He had saved the princess, and yet that act had placed him in a position where he could not return home. He could not contact his crew. He could not make decisions about his own life, and he could not know if he would ever see Earth again. Despite these fears, he found solace in small victories. He learned to move with the palace staff without drawing attention. He practiced speaking parts of their language, and he began understanding the customs that governed every interaction. Every small success was a reminder that he could navigate this world. Even if he could not yet control it, the princess continued to be his anchor. She encouraged him, guided him, and shared her own frustrations with the strict rules of her world. Through her, he learned that even in a place of rigid structure, there was room for compassion, kindness, and quiet rebellion. They shared stories of courage, fear, and hope, realizing that despite their differences, they were not so different after all. One evening, she confided in him about her own struggles. "Even I have limits," she said softly. "I cannot openly defy my mother, but I can choose small acts of kindness, small ways to support what is right. That is how I can help you without bringing harm to myself or my people." He understood. Her courage was not reckless. It was calculated, careful, and deliberate. And yet, even within these small acts, she demonstrated a bravery that inspired him to keep moving forward. Over time, he realized that his captivity, while frightening, had taught him something essential. He had discovered patience, observation, and strategy. He had learned to navigate unfamiliar systems, to understand customs far removed from his own, and to build trust across worlds. And most importantly, he had discovered that even in chains, he could find ways to act, to learn, and to grow. The princess's visits became a highlight of his days. She shared knowledge, stories, and quiet moments of laughter. She showed him that even in a world governed by strict rules, connections could be forged, trust could be built, and hope could survive. Yet the reality of the Empress's control remained ever present. He knew that despite their bond, every action carried risk. One misstep, one careless word could undo everything. He had to remain vigilant, patient, and thoughtful in every decision. Still, the small victories, the secret conversations, and the quiet moments of connection reminded him that he was not powerless. He had agency, even if limited, and he had a friend who believed in him. And that belief, he realized, was worth more than any freedom he had lost. As he lay in his room that night, reflecting on the past weeks, he understood something vital. Even in a place where he had no control over his circumstances, even in a world that was not his own, he could find strength, courage, and purpose. He had saved a life, built a bond across worlds, and learned to navigate the unknown. The princess had taught him that courage was not always about bold actions. Sometimes it was about patience, observation, and quiet persistence. And he had learned that kindness could exist even in a world governed by rules. And that hope could survive even in the most confining circumstances. He closed his eyes, thinking of Earth, thinking of the princess, thinking of the palace that held him in chains. And he realized that no matter what came next, he would face it with courage, with patience, and with hope. Because even in a world so different, even in captivity, he had discovered something stronger than fear. He had discovered that connection, kindness, and courage could exist anywhere, and that they could change not just a life, but a world. The palace had grown even more confining over the past weeks. Every corridor, every glowing chamber, reminded him that he was not free. The guards were polite, disciplined, and always alert, moving like shadows through the halls. Yet, despite the constant observation, he had begun to feel a spark of courage he had not known before. The princess had become his guide, his companion, and his link to hope. Through her, he had learned patience, careful observation, and how to navigate the palace without drawing attention. But now, he realized, learning was not enough. One quiet evening, as the sun's alien light softened across the floating towers outside, the princess came to him with a determined expression. She had been moving cautiously, avoiding the guard's notice, and now she spoke with urgency. "You must be ready," she said. "Your time here cannot last forever. My mother may keep you for weeks or months, but there is a way you can regain your freedom. It will be dangerous, but it is possible." He felt a rush of fear and excitement. Freedom was all he wanted, yet the thought of defying the Empress filled him with anxiety. What do we need to do?" he asked carefully. She lowered her voice. "There is a service tunnel beneath the palace, built for maintenance and emergencies. Few guards know of it. I have explored it myself. If you can reach it, you can leave without being seen, at least for a short distance. From there, we must find transport beyond the city's defenses. It will not be easy. Many dangers lie ahead, but stay near. Staying under constant watch is far more dangerous in the long run." He thought for a moment, weighing the risk. He had survived countless challenges to reach this strange world, had navigated unfamiliar technology, and had saved a life. Could he now risk everything for freedom? His instincts, sharpened by weeks of careful observation and learning, told him that this was his chance, maybe the only chance. "I'll do it," he said finally, determination rising within him. "We have to try." The princess nodded, her expression tense but resolute. She explained the plan carefully, step by step, showing him hidden entrances, guards' patrol patterns, and how to move quietly through the palace without being noticed. Every detail mattered. One misstep could alert the Empress, and he knew the consequences could be severe. Yet in that moment, fear was balanced by hope. They practiced in secret for several days. He memorized the layout, the guard schedules, and the timing of security checks. The princess guided him patiently, pointing out subtle signs he might otherwise miss. A shadow falling in the wrong direction, a light flickering that indicated an approaching patrol, a hum in the floor that hinted at movement above. Each detail was vital, and each small success gave him confidence. Finally, the night of their attempt arrived. The palace was quiet, the glow of the walls softer than usual. The guards followed their routines, oblivious to the plan unfolding in the shadows. He waited in the secret chamber the princess had shown him, heart pounding in his chest. She joined him, her eyes steady but full of concern. "Remember," she whispered, "we must move slowly, carefully. Every step counts." They slipped through the corridors, moving silently, avoiding the guards' patrols. Every moment felt stretched, every sound amplified in his ears. The glow of the palace lights created shifting shadows, and he used them to stay hidden, following the princess's careful guidance. His training, patience, and observation skills were tested in ways he had never imagined. As they reached the service tunnel, he felt a surge of relief, but it was fleeting. The tunnel was narrow and dimly lit, and the sound of their footsteps echoed ominously. He moved cautiously, mindful of every detail. The princess led the way, her confidence steady, but he could sense her tension. Even she knew that discovery would be disastrous. Hours seemed to pass as they navigated the tunnel, turning corners, climbing small ladders, and ducking under pipes. At times, the tunnel opened into small chambers filled with strange machinery. He studied them briefly, marveling at their complexity, but he knew there was no time for curiosity. Their goal was simple: reach the exit beyond the palace and find a way out of the city. Finally, they reached a hatch leading to the outer perimeter. He paused, taking a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. Freedom was close, but so was danger. He looked at the princess, who nodded once, silently. Together, they opened the hatch and slipped out into the night air. The city stretched before them, glowing softly, filled with towers, bridges, and floating pathways. It was beautiful, but it was also unfamiliar and intimidating. They moved quickly, keeping to the shadows, avoiding the patrols that roamed the streets. He noticed details he had never seen before. Guards communicating silently through gestures, surveillance drones floating silently above, and the occasional soft glow that indicated an alert system. Every step required focus and careful timing. Hours passed as they moved through the city. The princess guided him with precision, pointing out hidden routes and safe spots where they could rest briefly. He marveled at the city's beauty even in the dark. Towers of light, floating platforms, and bridges that glimmered like liquid glass. But he reminded himself constantly that beauty could not distract him from survival. Eventually, they reached the edge of the city, where the defenses ended and the outskirts began. Here, the air was different, fresher, more open, filled with sounds of the world beyond. He felt a thrill he had not experienced since arriving, the possibility of choice, the possibility of control over his own destiny. But even at the edge, danger remained. Patrols were still active, and the terrain was unfamiliar. The princess explained that from here, they needed to find transport to leave the planet's immediate area. She had identified a hidden station where ships rarely docked, and where a small vessel could take them beyond the city's surveillance range. It would not be easy, and they might have to improvise if anyone noticed them not as they approached the station. A shadow flickered in the distance. A guard, moving unusually fast, had spotted them, or at least suspected something. They ducked behind a stack of containers, holding their breath. Every second felt like an eternity. He could feel his heart pounding in his chest, his palms sweating. The princess whispered, guiding him to stay low, move slowly, and wait for the right moment. Minutes later, the guard passed, oblivious, and they continued toward the station. Finally, they reached it, a small docking area with a sleek vessel hidden behind a large container. He could hardly believe their luck. The ship was operational, the engines quiet but ready. They slipped inside, and he began to feel the first real sense of relief since he had been brought to the palace. The princess operated the ship with skill, navigating through the outskirts of the city and avoiding detection. He watched in awe as the alien world stretched beneath them, towers and lights shrinking as they moved farther from the city. For the first time, he felt the thrill of control, of moving toward a future of his own choosing. Yet even in freedom, uncertainty remained. They did not know what awaited them beyond the city, or whether they would encounter further dangers on the planet. But for the first time in weeks, he felt a sense of agency, a feeling that he could influence his own fate. As the city faded behind them, he turned to the princess. "We did it," he said quietly, almost in disbelief. She smiled, though her eyes were still cautious. "Not yet," she said. "We are safe for now, but we must keep moving. Freedom is not just about leaving the palace. It is about surviving beyond it." He nodded, understanding fully. The journey was far from over. They had escaped immediate danger, but the world beyond the city was unknown, filled with risks, obstacles, and challenges. Yet he also felt hope, a sense that with careful planning, courage, and trust in each other, they could survive and perhaps find a new life beyond the chains that had bound him. As they flew into the night, the glow of the city shrinking behind them, he realized something vital. Freedom was not a single moment. It was a process, a series of careful steps, and a test of courage, patience, and trust. And he knew that with the princess at his side, he could face whatever came next. Because even in a world so different from his own, even after weeks of captivity, he had discovered that courage, connection, and determination could lead to freedom, and he was ready to follow that path, no matter where it led.